We're rolling.
Welcome to the House Dudes podcast, where we invite you to follow us on our journey towards financial freedom using the power of real estate. I'm Jack Haas.
And I'm Josh Koth. Here at House Dudes, we believe in a couple key principles. Number one, the best way to retain information is by teaching it to others. And number two, a rising tide lifts all boats. We're not competitors, we're a community. So let's get into some real estate investing.
Well, we thank Mark Owens for being on the phone here today. Mark, thank you so much. And you have quite the story to tell. So I just want to start things off by giving you the floor and let the listeners know who you are, where you operate, and what you do.
Thanks, Jack. I appreciate it. I love telling these stories because I just, I like to let everyone else know what's really possible. Like it really happens to regular people. It doesn't require anything special. I am in the Baltimore, Maryland market. Before I got into the computers or into the real estate stuff, I was actually an IT guy. I was a Microsoft certified trainer. And I was teaching in colleges all over the Maryland, Virginia, DC area at the time. And at the time, I just, I was making good money and I was just saving my money and I was kind of following the poor dad model. And I started to see that the job security in that industry, like a lot of industries, wasn't real secure. And I had some money saved and I was just trying to think man, what am I going to do with this? And I put some money in the stock market, which is like a casino, and I made money. And then, there was a crash and I lost all the money that I'd made. I still had my principal, but I lost all the, the interest or, the, whatever you call it. And I wanted to find something else to do. And I'd always had some kind of interest in real estate, but I didn't know anything about it. And this was in 2002 when I bought my first rental. And back then, it sounds like a whole different world back then. There was no Bigger Pockets. There was no Facebook. I don't even know if Google was around. There was no Zillow. There were no meetups. As far as having access to resources and opportunities go, it was a lot more difficult. I didn't know any landlords for the first maybe year or two that I was in business. I didn't know any. And I was, doing it by myself. I'd put together an Excel spreadsheet to calculate my cash return on my investment because that's the only way I knew to really figure out if it was a good investment or not. It was just my cash on cash return.
Sure.
I know if I invest $10,000 in the market and I get a 15% return, which is phenomenal, I'm going to make $1,500, and it's a 15% return. And with real estate, I wanted a 30% return. I figured if I'm going to be working this hard and taking phone calls at 3 a.m. and all this crap, I better make a lot more money. And at the time, this is a Baltimore market. I know this isn't possible in a lot of markets, but that's what I was looking for in my first rental. That's what I was able to get. And what happened is the cash flow kind of gets addicted. You rent out a house and you see you're making a few $100s a month off of it. And you realize wow, that's my car payment. Man, if I get another one, that'll pay for my cable and, some other bills that you might have. And I just kept buying them. And that was before I knew about things like the BRRRR method and all this. Back then, you needed to put 10% down and you could finance the rest. I know that's not possible for everybody, but there's a lot more ways around that today than I could even imagine back then. One of the things that I would say is that I had good credit. And I don't care what business you're in, the better your credit is, the more opportunities they're going to come your way. And not only the more opportunities that are going to come your way, but they're going to be cheaper. If your credit score is 750, you can get money cheaper than if your credit score is 650. And if your credit score is 750, you have a lot more people that are willing to lend to you. So one of the first things that I talk to people that are new a lot, that want to get into this business, and that's one of the first things I tell them to do is go to Credit Karma or somewhere else, get a copy of your credit report, find out what your score is, and then see what you can do to fix it, see what you can do to raise it, because you don't have to do that to be successful in real estate, but it's going to make it a lot easier and a lot cheaper. So that's one of the first things I tell people to do.
Sure. Well, you already brought up the BRRRR method. So, a lot of people talk about it, but I haven't seen very many people actually execute it. So,
man, I do it. The first time I did the BRRRR, I'd never heard of the BRRRR. I actually thought I invented it. I'd done some retail rehabs around 2003 or 2004, 2005. I'd done a couple of retail rehabs after I found out about hard money. And I learned about the formula. It's the ARV, the after repair value, and you take 70% of that, and then you subtract your repair costs, and that's what you should purchase it for. And so just to use I know the math is really hard when you don't have a whiteboard or something. I just want to use a simple example. If you know the house is going to sell for $100,000 when you fix it up, and it needs $20,000 worth of work, 100,000, 70% of that is $70,000. And then you subtract your 20,000 that you're going to put into it. 50,000 is the most you should pay for the house. So I knew that formula, and I was using that to, buy houses, fix them up, sell them, make a little bit of money. And then one day I thought, man, let me think about these numbers. If I buy it for 50 and I put 20 in it, I'm all in for 70 plus, holding costs and all that, maybe 75. If I can get a lender to refinance it instead of selling it, I'm not going to sell it. I'm just going to refinance it, and I can pay my hard money lender back, and then I can keep the house with like nothing out of my pocket. And when I realized that, I thought like I invented that stuff, and I was really excited about it. The first time I actually tried it was with a 15-unit building. It was, and I still own that building. It's 8 apartments and 7 commercial spaces. And the 8 apartments needed complete renovation. And I found it was a listed property. And this was like the first big building that I ever bought. And I was really excited about it. I still had some money saved from when I was, in the IT stuff. And I can't remember all the exact numbers, but I think I bought the building for like $525 and I put $200 in it, somewhere in that range. And I was able to refi out, a year after I bought the building and own it with nothing out of my pocket. And that was the first time that I did it. I had done it several times since then, mostly with larger buildings. I've done it with some smaller buildings, but I do it mostly with apartment buildings. A lot of people don't understand this. Like I've heard this a lot lately, like people that are new, they've got $10,000 in the bank and they want to go buy a 120-unit apartment complex. What they don't realize is that most of these buildings are going to require 25% down. So if you're going to buy a $10 million apartment complex, you need $2.5 million down, plus maybe $100,000 in closing costs. $350,000, or $3.5 million out of your pocket to buy a building is beyond the reach of most of us, including myself. So that's why I think that people that are using the BRRRR method, you're really going to be limited with what you're going to use it for. First off, you're going to be looking for things that are going to require work to be done to them so that you get that sweat equity. Once you're able to do that, you're able to refi out based on that sweat equity where you can get the lower loan to value or LTV. Is this making sense? Because I'm saying so much information here.
It makes sense.
I don't want to lose some of the listeners. I want to explain what LTV is, or loan to value. A bank is going to say something like, okay, we'll lend you, we'll do a 70% LTV loan or 75% LTV loan. What that means is they're going to appraise the property. And let's say that the property appraises at $100,000, just to keep the number simple. And they say, we'll do a 75% LTV, 30 years, 6%, something like that. That means they will lend you 75% of the appraised value. 75% of a $100,000 house is $75,000. 30 years means you're going to pay off the loan over a 30-year period of time at 6% would be the interest rate. One of the tools that I use to calculate this stuff, it's called Carl's Mortgage Calculator. It starts with a K. You can download it from the Play Store or the Apple Store. It's free, and I use it all the time. It's just a real simple amortization. You type in the price, the number of months or years, the interest rate, and it tells you what your payment amount's going to be. You can look at a payment schedule where it'll show you your principal and interest payments for the length of the loan. It's a really valuable tool. Use it all the time, and it's free. And there's also a part up top where you can email the schedule to yourself so that you can actually have a copy of it that you can print out. So it's one of my favorite things. I probably use it just about every day. And so that's one of the ways, we're talking about the BRRRR method. Like that's the way that you scale your properties or your portfolio without really having to have like really deep pockets. If you want to buy 100 houses and each one you're going to need $20,000 down, that's 100 times 20. That's a lot of money. Most of us don't have that. But if you can use the BRRRR method where you can get loans based on the equity that you have because you put work into the properties, then you can scale a lot further and sometimes a lot faster. And the example that I use most of the time is, let's say that you're fortunate enough that you have $100,000 saved up. Most people, I'm just going to use Baltimore as an example. You can go out and buy one house for $100,000 and then you're out of money. Or you can put 20% down plus closing costs. Maybe you spent $25,000. Now you can buy 4 houses, and then you're out of money. Using the BRRRR method, let's say that it's not a perfect BRRRR. You still have to come to the table with $5,000. If it's $5,000, now you can buy 20 houses. You can buy 1, pay cash, use the banks and buy 4, or use the BRRRR and maybe buy 20, or possibly more. That's the route that I've gone. I've bought most of my rental portfolio. I've owned a little over 100 units now. Most of them I've used the BRRRR method, including an 18-unit apartment building, a 15, a 14, a 13, a 7, and a lot of single-family houses. That's the way that I've been able to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really cool that the fact that you've done that. And how many units have you been able to build up to? Like, this has been 3 years now, right?
Well, no, I started, I got out of the rat race and became a full-time real estate investor 3 years into it. So it was around 2002, I bought my first rental. 3 years later, around 2005, I quit that job. I was making $150,000 a year and I quit. Mm-hmm. And I started doing real estate full-time at that time. At that time, I probably had 35 units, maybe 40. Now I've got a little over 100.
Sure.
And it's been years. And this is one of the things that, if we had talked about it before, is like I talk about my experience like chapters in a book. If you're a beginning real estate investor, you're in chapter 1. And if you are the guy that's been doing this forever and you're about to sell your portfolio and retire to Fiji, you're in chapter 15. That's the end of the book. I'm at about chapter 13. Everybody wants to be in chapter 13, but they don't want to do the work to get there. It's like, you can't skip the chapters. You can try. I've seen a lot of people do it, and most of the time it doesn't really turn out well. And enjoy the ride. And I use this as the example. It's like, everybody wants a beach body. I want one. I don't want to do the work to get it. But let's say I did. Let's say I went and worked out for 2 months real hard and ate well and all that stuff, and I get the beach body. You still have to maintain it. You don't just get it, then you have it for the rest of your life. It still requires constant maintenance to have it. You get to chapter 13 where I'm at by constant maintenance. It's like it's a constant work in progress. And I love it. I love what I do. I work typically about 2 hours a day. And I really am grateful that I'm in this business because it's given me so much opportunity. But the one thing that I want to share with all of the people that are newer in this business is, man, you have the same opportunity. You might be limited on your geography. If you're in a state, in a part of a state where there's not a lot of people around, not a lot of opportunities around. I know a guy right now in Colorado that's bought 100 properties in the last year, and they're not in Colorado. They're all over the country. Mm-hmm. There are opportunities that are there for all of us. The thing is that you have to do it, and it requires a lot of work and a lot of attention. And one of the things that I would suggest that people do, and I did this in the beginning, is you're going to be working a lot in the beginning. Any business that you can look at that today is really successful and the owners are doing well, they were busting their ass when they were building up that business. Nobody starts building a wildly successful business just by working when they feel like it now and then. It doesn't work like that. And one of the things that I would suggest you do is sit down and talk to the people that you love, that you're, whether it's a husband or wife or girlfriend or whatever, or boyfriend, and have the conversation with them and say, listen, here's the direction. Here's where I'm at. I'm in chapter 1. I want to be in chapter 13, and it's going to require a lot of work. And I want you to be a part of it if you want to, but if you don't, this is what I want to do. This is my goal. And this is the why I want to do it. And the why is really important that they understand that. And because you want to get them on your team, even if that means, you might be working 60 or 70 hours a week building up your portfolio. If they know why you're doing it, it's going to make it a lot easier. Hopefully you get some agreement with them. Just disappear at 7 o'clock in the morning to go to Home Depot, and then you don't get home till 7 that night without any explanations. That usually doesn't go over real well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you manage all of these units yourself?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Most people would say that's crazy.
Yeah, that's mad.
So how do you do that?
Well, most people follow the poor dad model. So I don't pay a lot of attention to what they say. The way that I do it is I delegate and I automate. I pay All my bills are on auto pay. I've got a great team. I got 5 guys that work for me full time. So I'm not, when I say I manage my properties, I manage the properties. I'm not out there. If a tenant calls me right now and says, my heat isn't working, my toilet's clogged up, like, I'm not going to get fixed the furnace. I'm not going to go and clog the toilet. I can run most of my business with a cell phone and a laptop from a cruise ship. As long as I have internet access, I'm good. Because I have other people that do the work that I don't want to do. And that's the way that I started, is if it's something I don't want to do, I'll find somebody else to do it. Mm-hmm. And I don't like writing checks to pay bills. I don't mind paying the bills. I just don't like writing the checks. It's a pain in the ass. So automate it. For some of the stuff like how do I put this? The gas and electric, our utility bills can fluctuate real high in the winter, low in the summer. Mm-hmm. I put budget billing so it kind of evens out. So the bill's about the same amount every month. That way I don't get in cash flow crunches in the middle of the winter, and then same thing like with oil bills, any kind of bill that I get, I put it on auto pay, and I have oil that I buy for one property where in the winter it might be $700, $700, and then I don't pay anything for 6 months. Mm-hmm. I put that on budget billing, so I'm paying for oil in July. We're not using any, but I like to have my budget so that it's consistent. Mm-hmm. And I do stuff like that. If I have to take a tenant to rent court, I never go to rent court. I have a company that I use where I go online and I type in the information, I hit submit, I spend $50, and they go to rent court for me. So everything that I've identified that I don't like to do, I find somebody else to do it for me, another way to do it.
Yeah. So how do you find these people again and vet them out? Because I know that can get troublesome too.
It is, man. That I can find a good deal. I can find a good tenant. Finding good people to do the work is the hardest part of the job. It's trial and error. It's just like it seems like I always use relationships. How many girlfriends did you have before you got married? 3, 10, 100. It's like, it's very rare that the first date that you ever go on, you fall madly in love and stay with that person. It's the same way with contractors. I have those things separated out where I've got, one guy that I use for HVAC. I got another guy I use for plumbing. I have another guy that I use for electric. I have another guy that I use for my roofs. And these are all licensed, bonded people, insured, all that stuff, that not only do work for me, but I know a lot of other people that they do work for. They're professionals. Mm-hmm. I learned a long time ago that I can pay the professional $500, or I can go get some neighborhood guy and pay him $300. And then 6 months later, I'm paying the professional to come back and fix the stuff that the neighborhood guy screwed up. I learned that lesson like a lot of us do. I would rather pay more and get it done right and have the peace of mind than try to beat the price down and all that stuff. And then, you wind up with a lot more stress in the end. So I just, I've got a team of people that work for me. The 5 guys that work for me full time, they do drywall. They do some basic plumbing, electric, put the floors down, hang the cabinets. But, I've got a different guy that does the carpet, a different guy that does the windows. So I try to keep as much separate as I can. I got a pest control guy. And one of the things that I learned that made my life really easy is when the job's done, man, I pay him like immediately. If my plumber finishes up something, he gets his final inspection on my house, I'm going to pay him that day. I'm not going to drag it out. If I get a guy that fixes a furnace for me in the middle of the winter and the heat's not working and he runs over and fixes it, I pay him immediately. Part of building my team is being loyal to the people that do work for me, the tradespeople. If I pay them immediately, then what that gets me is if I'm on vacation somewhere and I need them, they'll go do the work because they know as soon as I get back, I'm going to pay them. They never have to chase me down for the money. And it's building the relationships like that is like really important to me. And it's made my life a lot easier. Again, I leave money on the table because I want an easy life. Mm-hmm. I don't put down every nickel and dime. I see people online that are like, they're putting so much effort into saving $100. They'll spend the whole day trying to save $100. I'd rather just go to Home Depot and get the materials and then spend the other 6 or 7 hours like looking for the next deal that's going to make me $10,000. And a lot of people don't think like that. So your time, for me, I figured this out. I can't speak for everyone, but time is my most valuable asset. I can always make money back. I can always do a lot of other things. But like when you lose that time, you'll never get it back. Yeah.
No, and I think you're the way you're handling and managing your business is a perfect sign of that. I mean, you're buying other people's time. You find it's so valuable that you're buying other people's time too.
That's a really good point. I wouldn't tell them that, but you're right. You're right.
So, with all of these, you got 100 rentals now. I'm sure you've gone down the road of owner financing somewhat too.
I love owner financing. Yeah. We could do a whole segment on just owner financing. The thing that people are afraid to ask, I talk to my friends, are like, well, how'd you get owner financing? I'm like, I asked the guy, and they're afraid to do it. It's like, what's the worst thing that can happen? They're going to say no. I've had people say no. I have a way that I do it that it would be really cool if I could get a video of this one day, but I'll pretend that you're
now, and now you'll have a video of it.
Yeah. We'll pretend you're selling a house, and I'll look at you, and Jack, in this scenario, you don't have a mortgage on the property, and you want $50,000 for the house, and that's about market rate. And so I meet you at the house, and I'll go through it, and it might just be a market rate house. It might not be a great deal. And I'll say, listen, Jack, I really appreciate you coming out and showing me your house. I went through it with you, and I thought things might be a little bit different. Trying to figure out a way where I can make this something that's going to work for me. Because right now, the truth is, I can buy houses that are in this condition at this price, anywhere. So I'm just trying to figure out a way where I can help you out and it'll work for me. Mm-hmm. And then I pause, and I might even just walk away for a second. Then I'll say, do you have a mortgage on the house? And if they say no, which, believe it or not, happens more often than you would think, then I say, listen, I'm not saying this isn't an offer. I'm just trying to figure out a way where we can make this work. You want $50,000 for the house. What if I gave you $500 a month for 5 years with a balloon at the end, where I'll pay you the rest in 5 years? I'll give you $500 a month, and then in 5 years, I'll give you the rest. That would be, I'd owe you $20,000 in 5 years. I'm not saying I would do this because it still might not be a good deal for me at all, but I'm just trying to figure out a way where we might be able to make this work. And believe it or not, at least 50% of the time they say, yeah, I would consider something like that. And then I say, all right, well, let me think about it, and I'll call you later on this afternoon. I don't make the deal right there. I don't want to come off as though I know that I just got a really good deal. I want to make it appear as though I'm still thinking about this, struggling to make it work. Want them to know that they're not giving me a great deal by any means. Then I'll call them later on that day, and I'll say, listen, here's what I can do. I can give you $500 a month for 60 months and then a balloon at the end. Or I can do $500 a month for 7 years, and that would be almost all the money. Or I can't do the math. 84. It'd be $41,000. What I do is I tell them that I'm just going to give them $500 a month, and I'll talk about interest or any of that stuff. I've had them object and say, so you're not going to, what's the interest rate? And I said, I'm not going to pay you interest. Well, why not? I was like, well, listen, man, do you want to give you 45 for the house and pay 5% interest? I'm giving you what you want, but I'm going to make principal only payments. And here's the way I phrase it. I say, look, if I make principal only payments, then in 3 or 4 or 5 years, it's going to be a lot easier for me to refinance and pay you the other 20 that I'm going to owe you, because I've already paid down a lot of the principal, and I'm going to have a real low loan to value ratio. So the whole, my whole goal is to be able to pay you back. If I'm just paying mostly interest payments for 5 years, in 5 years, I'm not going to have that much equity. I'm not going to be able to refi out and pay you back. And that's the way I explain it. I've bought a lot of houses like that. I bought some houses where I made principal only payments until the houses are paid off. In fact, I can think of 2 right now that I bought from an attorney like that, where I just made principal only payments until the house is free and clear. And it's funny. This is like chapter 13 stuff, what I'm about to tell you. But I just did this. There's a place that I go in the Cayman Islands that's like my favorite place. I've been going there for years. It's a scuba diving resort on the east end of the Cayman Islands. And I've always wanted to buy a condo there. But the price is I'm always looking at it from an investor standpoint. Man, this doesn't make any sense. A 3% cap rate, I can get a 15% cap rate in Baltimore. It doesn't make any sense. And then one day I realized that my own thinking is limited. This isn't an investment that I want. This is like a lifestyle that I want to invest in. And so we're staying at this unit. It's my favorite unit. This was January of last year. And we get home, and like a month later, I look online again, and I see that the condo that we were in, that's my favorite one, was listed for sale for like $350,000. So I texted the agent, and I said, hey, I'm just curious, do you think the owner would consider financing? And she said no. She emailed me back and said no. And a few months later, I saw that the price on that condo had gone down $10,000, and I emailed her back. And I said, this is what I'll do. Tell the owner I'll give him $50,000 down. I'll give him $2,000 a month for 4 years with a balloon at the end. And she called me that night, and she said, listen, I'm going to submit your offer to the owner, but I can assure you he's not going to accept it. Mm-hmm. And then she called me the next morning and said he accepted my offer. Got to ask. You know?
You got to ask. And that's another point that we keep driving home too, is that if we go through all of the work, we're going to put it and present it in writing.
Yes. Well, that's what I did for her. I wanted it in writing. I didn't want her to have the conversation with the owner. Well, he said this and that. I'm just like, I'm putting these numbers on paper. And the guy, just like that, took the offer.
Yeah. It's actually really amazing how people, investors or realtors or whoever you're working with, will negotiate against themselves.
Absolutely, all the time.
And it's time to stop doing that. You really have to just put it out there and see what they say.
Yeah, the first time that people ask that question, I'm just thinking back to when I was like a newer investor and hadn't done as many different types of transactions as I've done now. It's like, it's kind of scary, to ask. It's like, this isn't orthodox, this isn't what people usually do, and all that stuff. But man, you got to get out of your comfort zone. The first rental's busting out of your comfort zone. There's nothing, as far as investing goes, the first rental is by far the hardest. Mm-hmm. You're putting up some of your money, some of your time. And for me, it was scary stuff. And then I thought to myself, what's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing is I hate this business. I sell the property in a year or two. I lose $5,000 or $10,000, and then I get to live the rest of my life. And that's it. That's the worst thing that can happen. I got to lose some money, lose some time. So what? Well, what's the upside? The upside is that you could create a life. My life now is way beyond what my dreams were 15, 17 years ago. I never thought I never even considered that I would be where I'm at now. But there's nothing special about me. My story is something that can happen to anyone that's listening here. You just got to do it. You just got to buy your first one, and then you buy your second, and then you buy your third. One of the things that is going to significantly shorten your learning curve that you have available that I didn't is the freaking ability to network. Like podcasts. Who the hell heard a podcast 17 years ago? Nobody. Mm-hmm. If somebody would have said it to me, I'd have thought, is that something on a farm? I would have had no idea what they were talking about.
Right.
So, between stuff like this, the value that Jack's providing with these podcasts, with the meetup groups, with the RIAs, with the bigger pockets, man, you've got all the information available to you. The thing that holds most of us back, the biggest obstacle for most of us is what's in here, what's in our head. It's our mindset. And one of the things I would suggest you do is avoid anybody that says this crap doesn't work, because if they say that, they don't have any idea what they're talking about. You want to start to surround yourself with people that are trying to improve their lives, whether it's, with houses, or they're going to buy a pizza shop or whatever. Like entrepreneurs in general, we're like a herd. We all think we have the same problems. I don't care if you're a landlord or you own a pizza shop. Our problems are the government, which is always getting in the way, employees, which can be a pain, suppliers, whether it's the guy selling you your dough for your pizza or Home Depot. We all have the same issues. Payroll, people that owe us money. We dropped off the food, they didn't pay us. The guy did the furnace, he sent him a bill, but he didn't fix it. It's like we all deal with the same issues. And so it's really good to surround yourself with other people that are like-minded. If you haven't read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that's be the first thing you do is read that. It's a philosophy book. It's not a real estate book. It's just going to change the way that you think about the world and the opportunities in it. And avoid the people with the poor dad mentality. They're the people running the world, unfortunately. The poor dads run the world. And they're in government. They're the bankers. Nobody knows less about the BRRRR method than a banker. You talk to the average banker at Wells Fargo or Bank of America, nobody knows less about lending than those people. They think they know it all. That's a whole other subject. But, you want to talk to the community banks in your area, the small local banks that aren't restrained by the Fannie guidelines. People say this, well, you can only buy 10 houses and then the banks won't lend you any more money. That's not true. That's not even remotely true. And in fact, the people that will tell you that are the people that work at the big banks, because there's nobody more clueless. It's funny, really. You got this guy sitting in a suit and tie behind a big desk, and nobody's dumber than them in this business. They think they know so much and they know so little. They know what their bank does, but their bank's like a very small percentage of what's really happening out there, And so make sure that you talk to people that are doing it. Don't take your advice from like the bank guys, because most of them don't. They don't have a clue.
Sure. I don't know if we can top that last. I'm going to call it a rant. That was awesome. So if people want to reach out and get a hold of you, Mark, where do they get a hold of you?
I just got in the backyard and yell. I'm just kidding. So probably email. I got a website, markowens.com. That's probably the best place. If you go there, my email's on there, mark@markowens.com. There's I got a Facebook group that I run, stuff like that, but that's probably like the best place to start.
Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us this week. This was it turned into a pretty epic rant there at the end. I loved it, and I hope we can have you on again soon.
Yeah, can I say one thing before we go?
Sure.
Yeah, listen, if for everyone that's listening to this, when I say this, I mean this with the utmost sincerity. The biggest obstacle in this business, it's us. It's in our head. It's our thinking, I can only do this or I can't do that. And that's most of the time, it's not true. It's like you got to find other people that are doing it. If it's, and I'm talking about other people that are doing it successfully. I'm not talking about an uncle that bought some rentals in the 80s and lost his money. I'm not talking about that guy. I'm talking about people that right now own rental properties in the market that you want to invest in. Those are the people that you want to get to know, because they can significantly shorten your learning curve. You don't have to learn all this by yourself. I learned it by myself, and it took a long time. I wish I knew me 17 years ago, because it would have probably saved me a lot of headaches. That's what the best advice I can give anybody is find other people that are doing it in your market and start hanging out with them and learning from them. That's
awesome advice. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why, in our area, we didn't have a local meetup. So we basically had, we took over the one that was here. And it's grown and become a really supportive group. It's really
fantastic. And Facebook too. I started a Facebook group, Baltimore Investors Network. There's almost 10,000 people on it.
Yeah.
If you're in Baltimore and you need somebody to unclog a toilet, get on there and say, hey, who can unclog a toilet? And you'll get 20 replies in a half hour.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if your group is private, but that's also a great place. We have a private Facebook group, and it gives people the opportunity to ask questions without the public eyes, and you're just in that supportive group to help support each other and answer questions and help where we can. Yeah,
so I think it's I'm glad you started that. I think those things are really valuable resources for all of us. It's a business where there's we most of us, the good guys, help each other. It's like there's enough deals out there for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always point people to that. You mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad, but I've been obsessed with the Go Giver book.
I read it. Yeah, a friend of mine bought that for me because he said I am one, so he bought it for me.
Yeah, that's an awesome book, and that's really a great way to position it. There's a lot of. I had a person that I interviewed the other day that called them ask holes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people like that out there, and to become a
it's true.
Is definitely a different mindset.
Yep.
So, well, thank you so much, Mark, and we'll talk to you hopefully again in the near future.
We've put a lot of effort into providing useful content, and if you found value in the show and have any interest in supporting us with a small donation, head over to patreon.com/housedudes. And if you have any thoughts or questions, shoot us an email at info@housedudes.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter @housedudes. And if you like what you're hearing, head over to iTunes, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really helps other investors out there find the show.
And remember, massive positive impact requires
massive positive action. We'll see you next time. This episode was brought to you by housedudes.com. Do you have time to actively manage flipping and rentals yourself? If so, go for it. If you live in a market that won't cash flow or don't have the time to do all the work, are you just out of luck? If there was a way to participate more passively, would that appeal to you? I'm sure you have questions about how the process works and what to do next. If that's the case, fill out the form on housedudes.com/investors, and we'll reach out to see if you are a good fit for our business. This is first come, first serve, and we will have to stop taking applications when our goals are met. See you at housedudes.com/investors.
I don't like to tell a man what to do with his money, but if you ain't investing in property, then you're dumber than a dummy.
I'm not dumb. I'm smart.
Well, buy property. That's my advice.